Hey, what's up, everybody? We get RoseNthorn Talk episode 15 started right away. Of course, I'm your host, Aaron Marshall Clark. Just going to accept the invitation to join the conversation from Joachim, and we'll get started. Hey, what's up?
Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Pretty good, you?
Doing great, thanks. So, RoseNthorn Talk episode 15. I'm your host, Aaron Marshall Clark, and my guest today, special guest today, is the one and only Joachim Chochinov. And a little background story on how him and I came to cross paths in the music industry is we both performed at the TJ Gift Foundation, which I'm a board member for. We performed time, though I was in a band called Twofold, and we performed with another great band called Eternal Now. And on the bill was a band called Oversteer, which Joachim was a part of, and we'll talk about that and all things Joachim Chochinov today. So thank you for being on the show, and I thank everybody for the show. So it's new with you?
Nothing much. Just, working on music, like, during these crazy times, practicing.
Right. So we're going to get right to that. Speaking of practicing and songwriting, how long have you been playing? Currently you're 16, 17?
16. I just turned 16 in May.
Okay, well, congratulations on that. I'm born in May as well, so I know that's always a good time. So what inspired you to play instruments, and what was the first instrument you ever played?
The first instrument I ever played was probably the drums. I got my first drum set when I was just 3 years old, and that's sort of what started it.
Yeah.
I also got a guitar, I think, around when I was 3, but I was more into drums at the time.
Why is that? How did you find that there was more interest in drums?
Well, at the time, it just seemed a bit more user-friendly, and I always, even before I got the drums when I was 3, I always would bang around on pots and pans, so that was the big interest in the drums. And I just, really liked the idea of drumming, because I was inspired by people like Ringo Starr from the Beatles, because that was, one of my first favorite bands growing up.
With the Beatles, okay, absolutely. Right on. So with school and the music curriculum, of course, it's evolving. When I was your age, once upon a time, a long, long time ago, music curriculums are a lot different. I played myself personally trumpet. I could play French horn as well. Due to playing trumpet, as you know, brass instruments are all intertwined. So with that being said, I came from a small farm town where there was a band, there was marching band, there was jazz band. I was a part of all of them. Mm-hmm. So what's it like in school with music curriculums? Because I'll let you tell the story, but it's so different than what you're doing outside of school, if that makes sense. So how does music theory and learning from a teacher differ from learning on your own time?
Recently I actually haven't done music, like band and music in school, but I actually still have been getting credits because I attend an alternative high school called the Seven Oaks Met School, so you get credit for your own extracurricular activities outside of school.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But yeah, I was in band from grade 6 to 8, all of middle school, and I actually started out by playing the tuba. I played the tuba in band. I played the tenor saxophone, and I also did play the stand-up bass. But I will say that in band, it's a lot harder to learn reading music right away if you don't have previous experience. So I find that I learned a lot through private music lessons, specifically from teachers at School of Rock at the time and stuff like that. Yeah.
Tell us about your experience there. Now you brought that up. I was going to mention it. You beat me to the punch. But tell us about School of Rock and what the experience was like. Say different than even learning from the curriculum in music in school. Yeah. What was the experience like?
Well, School of Rock was a very great experience. I started there in grade 8. I went there for about 3 years. And I really liked it because it really taught me how to be a great performer, because it's performance based, and you have one music lesson a week, and then you have one band rehearsal. So there's different shows. So there's different groups to be part of. Like just an example of some shows I was a part of. I was a part of a Metallica show.
Wow.
British Invasion show, Led Zeppelin. What else? Yeah, so that's just a few examples. Oh, Canadian rock, that was a really good one. But the lessons, I was taught a lot of stuff that I really liked. Like, I learned a lot of advanced shredding techniques from some teachers there.
Right. And for those who know, I know, of course, you do as well, clearly. But tell us, for the audience, what shredding is and what that entails, and really how intricate you have to be with it, and how difficult it can be, right?
Yeah. Well, one of the biggest, best tricks for shredding is like not a lot of big movements, like to try to utilize as much, like not using your entire arm so you don't get tired out. So using your wrist is actually a very good way to practice doing it. And you just want to be very intricate and like start slow and eventually work your way up to speed with like different sequences.
How, what's a timeline on something like that? Something as in learning shredding properly? How long has it taken you personally?
Pardon?
How long has it taken you personally to, I wouldn't say master yet because we're always learning, right? But for you to become very apt with shredding, how long did that take? And what was the break you realized, okay, I got this now?
Well, I'd say this year was a big year for my progress on it, because that sort of always was my key goal. Like I thought that was the coolest, like fast guitar solos. But it took me like one of them, the most defining shredding techniques. It's called sweep picking, which is like a fast type of picking technique where you're doing really fast arpeggios. And that took me about, I'd say, a year to sort of get down to where it like sounded pretty clean. Right. But yeah, I'd say it took Ivec. I've been playing guitar for about like 6 years, I would say. But I got really into it probably the past 3 years. And so that's where I just practiced. Like I practice about 4 to 5 hours a day sometimes. Right. But sometimes I do take days off just to like recover and like get back in the game. So
here's another question just popped into my head. It doesn't sound like you really played with toys when you were younger, which is cool because you were playing drums since 3, right? So was there time for any of that kind of stuff when you were a kid? Because it sounds like you went straight into music.
Well, no, as a kid, actually, I still did play my fair share of toys. Like I wasn't like as serious as I was when I was little as I was now. Like I sort of just like sometimes I would jam with my dad. Like he's a very good bass player. He's been around the music scene for like years. Played with like famous artists like Bo Diddley and Ian Thomas. But I used to like play along with him. Like he would play bass and I would play drums when I was little, or I would like play along with Beatles songs on my iPod. Nice. But I also did. Like, I always built with Lego, and, like, I did my fair share of playing with toys, I'd say.
Do you still play with Dad? On that note, do you still play with Dad and practice with Dad now and then?
Yeah, we're actually working on a project together.
Awesome. Like an album, or is it like a compilation?
Yeah, an album.
That is amazing. Well, we'll look forward to that. We'll keep everything sealed for now. That's great to know. So I was going to ask next, do you recall the first song you ever wrote? What was it about?
The first song I ever wrote? Well, actually, to be honest, songwriting is actually pretty new to me. For the first while, I just would I mostly only be playing covers. Like Oversteer is mainly actually a cover band. But the first song I ever wrote, I don't really know what it was about because most of my songs are instrumentals. I'm not really too good with lyrics. Yeah. But I'd say I wrote my first song maybe last year, maybe.
Okay, wow. And like, I'll get into that. Like, how is the songwriting process? Is it, maybe you're being a little hard on yourself. You're still learning the songwriting. It's just like learning guitar, right? So your skills will advance in time. That's just through my own self-experience of writing original music as opposed coming from a cover background, so to speak. So with songwriting, what's maybe one of the biggest challenges right now? What's something you're working on or looking for advice on that's going to help you moving forward?
Just like when I get writer's block, say I have like a really good riff and I can't think of what a next part for it to go in. Right. but I'd say most through all in all, I'd say songwriting comes pretty natural to me.
Nice.
Like I've always sort of like messed around with riffs, but I never actually turned them into like actual songs.
Right. Okay. Now, just over 2 years ago, one of your first posts, if not your first post on Instagram, when I was doing my research and finding some details that I wanted to ask some questions about, like this, it kind of left it, I don't want to say incomplete sentence, but it leaves more for one to think about. And what I'm getting at is it mentioned you were on a tour and it's almost over. What was that tour and what was that experience like?
Oh, well, about 2 years ago, when I was going into grade 9, I think, the School of Rock has this exclusive audition-only band called the School of Rock House Band. And basically what that is you get to play many shows around town. You learn a repertoire of songs, weekly rehearsals, and one of the benefits is there's a week and a half long tour where you get to go play around. Like we got to go to Minneapolis, Indiana, Milwaukee, Chicago, and the main key part of the tour. Actually, one of the bass players, Daniel, in the chat, he was on the tour too.
Hey, it's up, Daniel.
Shout out to him. He's a really amazing bass player.
Nice.
But we got one of the highlights of the tour. Like the big point is you get to play at this really big music festival in Milwaukee called Summerfest.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it was like amazing. Like we got to see Cheap Trick, which was really cool too.
That's an amazing band. What was like being on the road at such a young age, really, when you think about it? Like, what was the experience like?
Well, it was just incredible. Like it was like a surreal experience getting to you feel like you're like famous musicians on a tour bus, like stopping for pit stops, staying at hotels.
Right.
Yeah, and like arriving to the shows and then having to leave after, right? Like in the morning.
Yeah. Because on to the next one, right? On to the next city. So what was your biggest takeaway from this tour?
One of them is actually organization, because you have to be able to pack your stuff up really fast and make sure you have everything. And another one is definitely show experience, like playing in front of different crowds, different venues, big or small, to know you have to put on a quality show every night, no matter if the crowd's small or you're not feeling or you're a bit tired.
Exactly.
And you have to. Another thing is troubleshooting. I only brought one. I think I only brought one guitar, or I had a second guitar, but it was in a different tuning. I didn't have it at that show, and I actually broke a string on my guitar. And I don't know if you ever heard of a Floyd Rose bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah, but basically when you break a string on it, they're very hard to maintain bridges. So when you break a string, you can't just sort of fake your way through the song. The whole guitar goes out of tune. So I learned that I had to try to compensate with my ear, and then I had to. Luckily, somebody was able to quickly get me a guitar for the next song, somebody else's guitar. Is a random act of kindness, but.
Great. And those things are going to happen. It's just about our adaptation, right? Which you clearly did. So that's amazing, especially in that type of high energy, everybody watching environment at the time.
Very stressful.
Huh?
It was very stressful.
Oh, yeah.
It was a full house. It was at a venue in Chicago called Lincoln Hall. All these different kids from around the world were watching. Wow. And it was in the middle of a solo, which was the worst.
But again, you made it work, and telling experience, it's something you'll never forget, but also something you learn from. And again, how you adapt so quickly. So equipment, as we both know, as everyone knows, equipment for any type of career profession is very expensive now. But very necessary for your performances, clearly, just based on what you talked about. Now, how do you manage to save money being 16 in high school? Part-time jobs are all been. I was there once upon a time. How do you manage to save money and prioritize for always expensive equipment?
Well, I am very fortunate. I have very supportive parents who support my music, and they actually help get me the equipment and pay for it. And I chip in, but my parents are the main reason why I have the equipment I have.
That's amazing. My parents have done the same thing, in the past. Now, a few years back, you played with an amazing band called Moontown. Shout out to Nick Knock, a friend of mine. He's was a drummer of Moontown. How did that come about? How did you get to play with such a phenomenal band?
Once again, actually, it was a School of Rock induced opportunity.
Okay.
So basically, the School of Rock does this holiday benefit concert every year called the Rock the Halls, and they get various bands to play. Like just last year, we had pretty big name bands like Comeback Kid, Cancer Bats, the Crash Test Dummies.
Nice.
But
Wow.
pardon?
Sorry, all different genres of rock as well.
Tons of different genres. But 2 years back, I not only did I get to play with Moontown, I also got to play with Bright Righteous.
Right.
Yeah, and so I performed a song called "The Faceless Night" with Moontown at the School of Rock the Halls, and I met Adrian Dyer and Nick Knock, two really great guys who I'm still friends with to this day. And they said, "Hey, like, do you want to be? I'll put you on the guest list. We have a show at the park on Friday." And this was like Christmas break, and I was like, "Oh, that would be awesome." And I didn't expect it, but then I got a text from Adrian the next day. He said, "Hey, it would be really cool if you want to perform The Faceless Night with us at our show at the park on Friday." And I was like, "That would be awesome." And that's how I got to play with them at the park. It was a really surreal experience because it was like a full house and all the lights.
That's amazing because Adrian's a fantastic musician, guitarist as well, and drums, and Kevin Hogg as well, just phenomenal with Bright Righteous. Yeah. So I'm glad in the sense of musicianship, you're learning from fellow musicians of mine and friends of mine that are just the right people to be teaching or observing, if that makes sense, because they've been there, done that, and continue to do so, and that's the path that you're headed on as well. So big ups on you for that, Joachim. Now, when we're talking about performing with these bands and your takeaways and what you're learning, at the end of the night, when you perform with a band like Moontown, and watch performances by local amazing talent like that and like Bright Righteous, what's your takeaway for yourself when you get home to say, you know what, I love what they're doing, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to evolve it. And how do you learn? What do you learn? What's the biggest takeaways from those type of performances? Is ultimately
well, I'd say one of the biggest takeaways is inspiration. Like, it makes me inspired to like want to practice harder and like write, and just like want to be like them playing on like big shows like that.
Yeah, absolutely, well said. And you streamlined that answer, which is phenomenal because you've obviously put a lot of thought into it. But you're very observant, and I know that just by watching you as a musician and how you carry yourself in bands and continue to do so. So who inspires you to pursue, who inspired you, I should say, to pursue music as a career? Was it your parents? Was it a specific band, combination?
I'd say it's a pretty big combination of my parents and definitely musicians. Like, one of my greatest guitar inspirations, just to name a few, are the legendary guitar player Jason Becker, which he very influenced the shred guitar scene. And he's sadly, but at the age of 19, he got a very bad disease called ALS. Yeah. So he can no longer play guitar, but he's still alive and he writes music with his eyes. So that inspires me.
Absolutely. And just to add to that, now you brought that up, I did not know he passed to that. When I was 23, back in 2004, my mother unfortunately succumbed to ALS. So I'm very, very well aware. Thank you. I'm very, very well aware of how that disease can affect. At the time she was 58 when she passed, to Jason Becker is 19 years old. Like it has no conscience, right? Really, with motor skills, especially being a musician, it dissipates very quickly. So I'm glad that, and I'm aware of Jason Becker, that what his skill set and what he's brought to you, so to speak, and others to continue on the tradition of being unique with the guitar, really, is what I'm trying to say. So that's awesome. What band are you currently in, and how do they differ, and how are they similar?
Actually, well, right now, the band I'm currently in is Oversteer, but sadly, all our gigs got canceled, so hopefully we get to reunite and play. But pretty much, there's no bands on the go right now. I'm pretty much only working on solo material.
Right. Well, we share a mutual friend in GMH Rocks, who is on episode 8, I do believe, 8 or 9. I want to say 8 of on season 1 of RoseNthorn Talk. Shoutouts to Greg, I know he's watching. And we touched base with that when he was on the podcast, I'd say just over a month ago. So how did that friendship, musicianship come to light?
We sort of just met over Instagram. Like, I think he followed me and messaged me about something. And then we sort of just started chatting, and I saw that he had a very big drive for music at a young age, and he actually asked if I could give him a guitar lesson. So that's how it sort of how it started. I gave him a guitar lesson over Skype, and then he does his own music with his GMH Rocks, and he asked me if I wanted to play guitar in his backup band. So that's something that's going to be for the future.
Fantastic, and that's just how things work out. Like, once you start jamming, as we know, with other musicians and see if the chemistry's there, then one thing leads to the next, and it can be a very beautiful thing. So comes to practice makes perfect. Of course, you've heard that old adage, we all maintain it or try to in life and improve on it. So
yeah,
you practice a lot. You mentioned you practice good, what, 4 or 5 hours a day?
Yeah.
Okay. And how do you make practicing unique each time? That's a lot of time, right? Practicing. Yeah. So how do you make it interesting every time you pick up your guitar or pick up the drums?
Well, I don't play the drums as much anymore, but I forgot to mention, but
sure.
My first instrument that I actually got really serious on was the piano. I started playing piano. I took classical piano lessons at age 6 up until about like a few years ago. So I took piano lessons for about 8 or 9 years with a piano teacher. Her name is Tusha Kozev. She's pretty big in the music scene. Her husband is a very talented and pretty big jazz guitarist around the city. His name is Ronnie Halderson, and he's played with a famous guitar player named Lenny Bro.
Yeah.
So I sort of played piano, learned classical pieces, and then I sort of picked up the guitar. So I just transcribed like everything I sort of learned on the piano to the guitar, and it made the transition to guitar much easier.
Wow.
But as far as practicing goes, like when I'm practicing, I don't really like keep track of time. All of a sudden, I'm practicing at 1, and before I know it, it's supper time.
Nice. Now, you teach Skype lessons on that note.
Yeah.
Do you put a lot of yourself in the people you teach with instrumentation-wise?
Can you, sorry, you just cut out.
Okay. I was going to say, with you teaching Skype lessons, do you see a lot of yourself in the students that you help teach?
Yeah. I definitely do. Like for Gregory, for example, Gregory, like when I was his age, I had the same interest in music and like looking at other musicians older than myself, and I just see that in him, and he's definitely gonna go very far.
Absolutely, I agree as well. So social media, as we know, is and we both follow each other's social media, so we know we are always have to stay on top of things, right?
Yeah.
How do you find that experience? This is your generation. For example, mine, to be honest, the internet was a thing in like 1996, 97. That's when it started to pick up steam in my world, the generation. Now, I've learned to adapt to the high frequency, I call it, of rapid information coming at you left and right, and me producing the same amount of quality, rapid information about all my passions. So how do you stay on top of it, of your social media?
I'm a bit addicted, I'll be honest. I probably should cut my time that I spend on social media, but on the other hand, it's very good for like finding out when different shows are happening or to keep in check with your musician friends. Yeah. But I always check it just to see what's going on.
Right. So what was your most memorable performance and why was it most memorable?
I'd say my most memorable performance was opening up for the legendary Brazilian groove metal band, or new metal band, Soulfly, which the singer of Soulfly, Max Cavalera, he was the heart and soul behind the band Sepultura.
Yes.
And it was just like an amazing experience getting to open for them with my old band Cause of Death, because it was a full house. There's like 500 people there, and it was like I was pretty nervous about it before, but once I got on stage, I just like the energy of the crowd and like just made me it just was awesome.
Like
and awesome. Yeah.
Now, how do you balance getting great grades, I'm trying to say, in school and maintain all this practice? How do you create that balance, especially with so many possibilities of distractions?
I probably should balance my music in school better because I could get better grades, and I'm trying to get better grades. So I don't have a great balance sometimes, but it's getting better. But I'll just be honest about that.
Oh, absolutely, and that's good, and we all appreciate you mentioning that. But there's always something for all of us to work on. Now, when it comes to Eugene, Jeannie LaFoe was on yesterday, dance choreographer for his team. Shout out to Jeannie. It came to light that you were in the Royal Winnipeg Ballet, and he had taught you. Tell us about that.
Well, actually, before my music career, I took dance lessons for about 8 years as well. From about kindergarten to grade 8 or grade 7, and I take assortment of classes. Like I took ballet for a while, I took jazz tap classes, musical theater, and hip hop. And I was in one of his hip hop classes on my last year that I was there, and I really liked it. But I just found out at the end that I had to do full-time music, so I didn't have time to do dance anymore, sadly.
Right, but you still have that experience, which is phenomenal. What will be the best advice so far in life that you've received? Could be from parents, teachers, friends. What's the best advice you've received?
I'd say the best advice I ever received is to never stop practicing. Just when you think you've learned it all and you think that I'll be fine, always strive to challenge yourself to learn more and gain more guitar experience and practice experience and learn new techniques. Because there's always new advanced techniques. For example, techniques like sweep picking and tapping. Those didn't really exist in the '60s, but they came to light, and most people don't really learn them like older players. So that's one of the things I want to be able to do. Say in 10 years from now, there's some crazy new thing picking technique or whatever that comes out. I want to be able to learn it. Keep learning.
Wow. Excellent answer. And thanks for your insight on that. Now, we're going to wrap up with the seven rapid fire questions under a minute. It's never usually under a minute. I just say that. But here we go. You are on a deserted island and you have one album. What would it be?
I'd say Planetary Duality by The Faceless.
Love the fact that you had the album ready. You already knew. That's great. What inspired you to become a vegetarian?
Well, I actually grew up vegetarian through my parents, because my parents were vegetarian back before I was born, so I was born into it. So they taught me the lifestyle, and I've just been following it ever since.
Good for you. And archery or axe throwing?
Archery.
Nice. Biggest misconception people may have about you?
Let me think for a second. To be honest, I don't know of any misconceptions people have thought about me, but maybe it is that that I think I don't know that I don't know. I honestly just can't think of an answer for that, because I don't know what misconception people. I don't think that's ever been brought up before.
So much the better. It's the first time that answer has been given too. So hey, that works for me. A genre of music you're interested in learning to play?
Well, one I'm interested in learning to play more, which I've already started learning, but is jazz. I just really like jazz, the complex chord structures and how the chords work with each other and melodies and the modes. And that's one that I really want to get better at. Absolutely.
Something about yourself that would surprise a lot of people?
Well, I would have said that I did art dance for a long time, but we already mentioned that, so I'll think of something else. Maybe that I guess that I'm a very big Pokemon card collector, and I have been. Yeah, I've been a really big Pokemon collector since grade 3, and I still collect them to this day. And I keep them all in a binder. I never trade cards because one day they'll be valuable.
That's awesome. And last question, will you be on RoseNthorn Talk in the future?
Yeah, definitely, for sure. You could have me
Joachim,
back anytime.
yeah, and you're more than welcome to come back at any time. Joachim, you are wise beyond your years. You have a unbridled passion for the arts, not just music. Obviously, we all know what that means with the arts in general. But you're not sacrificing your youth to get too far ahead of yourself. But you're enjoying that at the same time approaching the arts, life, art is life, with a confidence, but also with a continuing learning curve. That's how I describe our friendship, what I know about you through our friendship, you being on the show, telling the audience, you're welcome, about yourself. And again, that's why I would have a guest like you on the show. So thank you for being on the show.
No problem. Had a great time.
Yeah, I could tell, and as did I. So I'm glad we made this happen, and there'll be more times in the future. Now, shoutouts, social media, friends, family, anybody, give her.
Well, yeah, you could find me on Facebook, just my first name and last name, and then Instagram, just Joachim_Chochinov. And I'll give a shout out to Karen Weeb of TJ's Gift for all the awesome opportunities she's given me. Sky and Mark at Bulldog for always like supporting me and giving me show opportunities and work opportunities. Shout out to Corey Thomas at Ninja Cat Productions for like giving me like tons of show opportunities and like very, very great show opportunities. And of course, shout out to you, Aaron, for having me on the show. And most importantly, shout out to my dad and my mom for always supporting my music and getting me the gear I need.
You are inspiring, Joachim, and I look forward to talking to you again.
Yeah, for sure.
Everybody, you're welcome. Everybody, this episode will be replaying on my Instagram posts. It'll be on my YouTube channel, Aaron Marshall Clark, by tomorrow morning, if not tonight. So keep an eye out for that. Joachim, again, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks to the audience. I love you all for always watching and supporting this part of my vision, which is RoseNthorn Talk, and part of my dream and making it reality. So, Joachim, you have a great weekend. Audience, have a great weekend. I will. And you and I will talk soon, my friend.
Yeah. Take care.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, everybody. Have a great weekend.